Is it okay to hit your child for discipline? What do you think? I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach all over the world about parenting, good communication, how to build strong family bonds, and child development through the lens of the principle self-government. And in this video, we're talking about corporal punishment. In this video, we're going to talk about why people hit their children, why they think it's a good idea, and then we're going to talk about if it's effective or not effective, and what we can do to make sure that our discipline really hits the mark. So why do people hit their children? Well, there are multiple reasons. Sometimes they hit their children for discipline because they were hit as children and they felt like maybe it stopped them from doing some bad behaviors that they knew they shouldn't be doing. Sometimes they feel like there is a righteous reason why they should hit another person. So they might cite Bible references on that. I actually do have a whole video called "What Does the Bible Say About Spanking?" So you may want to check that video out for additional information after this one. Anyway, some people also just lose control. They don't have any skills. They don't know what to do, and so they hit. My guess is if you're asking this question, or if you find yourself on this video, that probably you're thinking, okay, my parents hit me, is that okay? Or my parents are hitting me, is that okay? Or I feel like the only way to get through to my child is just to hit them because that's all they respond to. And am I going to be okay doing that? Or is that going to cause some bad things to happen? So let's talk about some of those things. Now, if you've already subscribed to this channel, you know that this channel is all about self-government. So that is not just teaching your children self-government, but also teaching yourself to have self-government, which means that you plan ahead of time how you want to behave, and then you intentionally or deliberately follow through with that plan, and even course correct if you feel like the plan was not a good plan in the end, or maybe if you're going off course. So a person who is self-governed is directing themselves, instructing themselves regularly, and correcting themselves as well. How is your child going to learn to correct themselves? From you, from the way that you are correcting them. So you have to ask yourself that question. Be completely honest. Parents who yell and berate their children, who hit their children, can create children who, anytime they mess up, they yell at themselves. They tell themselves they're no good. They, beat themselves up verbally or emotionally and psychologically. Is that healthy for a person for their life? We're all just learning all the time. Our children are learners. We're supposed to be teachers. We're their primary teachers in their lives, actually. What we should really be thinking about is, what do we need to teach our children in this circumstance? Do we need to teach them to be afraid of us, or do we need to teach them to learn a particular principle, a particular skill to solve a problem? What is it that we need to teach them? So hitting children, or corporal punishment, is usually used to instill fear of the parent. Obviously, it's used to teach cause and effect, but it's usually done in anger, in passion, in the heat of the moment. Back in the old days, people used to write poetry and essays and books all about not being the victim of your own passion. They would say that passion tempts and troubles them, and that they could be misled by their passions, and so they needed to question their passions. Nowadays, we think very differently about that, and I think we've actually missed the mark. So now we say, follow your passions, which means that each person feels entitled to just emotionally vent on other people, and this could lead to increased physical interactions with parents and children and other children. It could lead to entitlement in our communications in a way where we behave more wild, more savage-like, and we don't find the understanding that we're hoping for. In fact, we might even find more polarization because of the wild and uncaring behavior that we have. So hitting isn't necessary. And I know this because I took in some of the most troubled children that my state had to offer. I did therapeutic treatment care for troubled teens for many years. So not only did I raise my 4 strong-willed children, But I also brought in these other people's children, and they were oftentimes neurodiverse and had multiple different acronyms attached to their file and their name. They also many times had trauma in their backgrounds and bad habits, things like that. And you know what? They almost always had what they called on their form, their intake forms. The term was anger control issues. So this meant that the person had a hard time dealing with their own feelings of anger. They would have outbursts. They had a hard time putting their cognitive function into action at the right time. So they would go to the wrong parts of their brain. So I had to help them with that. And I could not touch them. I could not spank them, kick them, smack them, pinch them, hit them, nothing. I only could touch them if they were going to be a danger to somebody else in a really bad way. It had to be like significant, because I was going to get questioned and maybe even hauled into court if I ever did touch them. So I had to be very careful. And guess what? Even though I could never touch them, they all learned self-government. They learned to control themselves. And our home was a great success. So much so that in 2009, the BBC asked to make a documentary of my family, and they brought two troubled teens, they were both 17, from the UK to stay in our home for 8 days to film it. They called the show The World's Strictest Parents. I know that's a crazy title, but that is what I was called. That's what I'm known for. At that point, people saw, oh, she's not being aggressive. They're actually being very kind. They're just describing things. They're doing teaching. They're being consistent in the teaching. And boom, these kids changed. They saw, in a matter of a couple of days, kids go from tantrums, fighting, aggression, to suddenly, can I stay at your house forever? Yes, I'd like to participate and be part of your family. You know, just this drastic shift. So this is what can happen to a person if they know they chose to be calm, if they're not intimidated, if they know what calmness is, what it feels like, how to get there. If you prepare them, you come up with a plan for them, and they recognize that their own self-government is their responsibility. That's the power of self-government for our children. So is it necessary to hit children? No. Is it legal to hit your children? Yes. In the United States it is. In many countries it's not. In the US, you can still practice corporal punishment. However, there are fine lines about where it crosses into abuse. And I just feel like if that's your only means of discipline, you probably are going to end up frustrated in no time. And your children will probably be resentful. This can happen as well. So how do we just do the training? Teach them the skills that they need for success. On this channel, I talk about the skills and principles of self-government. I often mention something called the 4 basic skills. Those 4 basic skills take care of 99% of a person's problems if they learn them, and they'll do them. But then if they don't, the parent has to know how to get them back on course, back on track with those skills of self-government. So the 4 basic skills of self-government are following instructions, accepting no answers and criticism, accepting consequences, and disagreeing appropriately. When a person learns those 4 basic skills, that takes care of 99% of their behavioral problems. I promise you, I took in the hardest kids that the state had to offer, and these were the 4 things we worked on. Very rarely I might make them another skill for something else, like controlling the impulse to lie or something like that. But even then, that can be handled with one of those 4 basic skills if you know how to do it. Those skills are absolutely beautiful, but you have to have your own parent skills as well to bring them back into check. So really what you're asking with this question is, how should I parent? What are my options? What should I do? Well, basically your options are, you can either hit your children, you can yell at your children, you can get emotional and take things personal in the parenting, or you can say, that's not my job. That's not who I am. My role is to be their parent. And as a parent, I am their teacher. I've written many books. I've actually written 11 books over the years. This is the one I'm the most known for, Parenting a House United. It's going to give you the majority of the tools that you need in order to be a self-governed parent. So go to teachingselfgovernment.com for this. But when I wrote this book, I thought everyone understood the concept of roles and who they are to their children, but they didn't. People kept asking me questions all the time that made it very clear that they didn't understand their role was to be a teacher, not to be an enforcer or something like that. You don't have to be a heavy or an enforcer. You don't have to go to war every day in your own household. You just need to be a teacher, and they need to be a learner. They have to choose to learn, and you have to choose to teach. There are other things about our roles that are also helpful. So I ended up writing this book called Roles: The Secret to Family, Business, and Social Success. And you can find both of these on my website, as well as other books for children and courses and things to help you with your self-government learning. So one key thing that you need is to know who you are to that child and make sure that you keep that picture very, very clear. Then you need the skills of self-government so that you don't fall back into old habits, or maybe even use some of the things that your parents did to you that maybe you feel like you shouldn't be doing with your children. So this is where the skills of self-government come in, and those 4 basic skills are part of those skills of self-government. Each one of the 4 basic skills has a skill set attached to it. There are also skills for parents as well. I call them the 5 teaching styles. There's problem-solving exercises, there's meetings that we have, there's ways that we set up the environment, and there's a lot of learning about calmness. There are a lot of pieces to this project of parenting in a self-governed way. Wouldn't you like to feel confident in your parenting? A lot of people don't feel confident in their parenting. Knowing what to say in any given moment gives you confidence. When the BBC asked if they could bring these troubled children to our home, they said, well, you know, they have these really bad behaviors and, you know, this other stuff you may not be used to. And I said, oh, you know what, there's nothing I haven't seen. There's nothing I'm not prepared for, so don't worry. Because for years I took in troubled teens. I did therapeutic treatment care. There was not a behavior I had not seen. But even if there is a behavior I haven't seen, I still have a plan and I know it's going to work. Because it's based on principles and on my own self-government. I only have to worry about controlling myself. I don't have to worry about trying to control anybody else. And they can learn the same lesson if they have the right skills. So learn how to communicate, learn the skills to teach. Instead of just being reactive in your parenting, be proactive in your parenting. There is a whole class on this channel that can help you get even more into the skills of self-government, and it will teach you some of those steps to the skills. And that class is called The Not So Known Secret for Parenting Success. So I highly recommend going there as you are in this learning process of self-government with your family. On my website, I have a support group that you can join. It's super cheap. It's like 16 bucks to ask questions. Now, I do recommend you start learning something first, at least read the book or something so you've got some of the nuts and bolts learned and in place. But then you can ask me anything on there. And if you're still struggling with your own ability to parent properly, or if you're struggling because their behaviors are so extreme, bring them up to me. Let's help you. So I'll see you either at teachingselfgovernment.com or in the next video, which is The Not So Known Secret for Parenting Success.